Hi, Robert Bonavito here, New Jersey forensic accountant. Today we're going to talk about estate and trust fraud, which is a big area, and I'm hoping you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, please smash the like button below because it does help with our YouTube channel. And if you look at the estate and trust fraud, it encompasses about 25% of our firm's investigations. And the reason for this are because it's a complex area where there's lots of money. You have administrators who have never done administration. You have beneficiaries mostly who have never received this type of money. So people get suspicious, or people make mistakes, or they have poor record keepings, or there's just all out fraud. But it's 25% of what we deal with. Now, the most important duties an administrator has are pretty straightforward, right? You have to read carefully the will of the trust. You need to understand what you can and can't do. You need to find the assets, set up a bank account, keep a list of the bank accounts, keep a list of your professionals that you're going to use. Keep communications open with the beneficiaries. Back up all deposits and disbursements. Make sure you have records for everything. Make sure you have a thorough accounting once the services are complete. Give it to the beneficiaries, have them sign off. Once they sign off, everything's okay, then distribute the money. This is important because that stops a lot of these crazy lawsuits. We recommend, just a little point, that if you do set up a bank account, try to set it up at the account where the deceased had his bank account, or with the grantors of the trust did a lot of work, because it just makes things easier to transfer the money over. Any expenses paid or incurred prior to setting up the bank account must be carefully documented, okay? Because let's say someone passes away, you have the repast, you have the funeral expenses. Anything you do before, you need to keep records, because you're going to want to get reimbursed for, right? So that's where we see a lot of mistakes. Things start off on the wrong foot. Make sure you file all the tax returns. Hire professionals. You need 1041s, 1040s, estate returns, trust returns. All this stuff needs to be filed, and they need to be accurate and timely. Otherwise, you're exposing yourself to a potential fraud investigation. And remember, executor fees are set by statute in New Jersey. We had a case where somebody left a large sum of money to the Humane Society, and the executors didn't have much work to do, and they took out $400,000. Well, we were called in, did an investigation. All that money was given back because, the statute clear that this is what they receive: 5% of the first $200,000, etc. So you can't just. You may want to think twice before you do become an executor or an administrator of a estate, because it's a lot of work, and you're not going to make any money from it, and no one's going to really be thankful. The beneficiaries are, they're not going to. They don't understand what's going on here. So you may think twice when you're chosen as a beneficiary or an executor. Reason for fraud investigations in estates and trust. The main reason we have so much litigation is that the estate trustees and the executors and executors don't take their job serious enough. You can't make mistakes, okay? You hire people, ask questions, don't commingle funds, don't take money, call the beneficiaries, don't text them or email them. Make sure everybody knows what you're doing to avoid problems down the road. General responsibilities are easy, right? What do? Okay, collect all the assets of the deceased, pay all the creditors, distribute the remaining assets. Pretty simple, right? Not. People can't do this. Again, it's the first time you're doing it. It's like you're, getting up to bat in a major league game. You never, swung a bat before. I mean, this is hard stuff. You're not going to be perfect. That's why you need to have professionals come in and help you, if it's complex. Mismanagement or fraud, that's the question. Are they stealing the money, or is it just mismanagement? So sometimes it's hard to do, and sometimes even if it is mismanagement, it becomes fraud. Okay. The most common ways trustees breach their fiduciary obligation include mismanaging trust assets, records, or trust management. Again, poor record keeping. Fraud. Sometimes people are just thieves, right? They just want to steal as much money as they can. It's unfortunate, but we see it all the time. Borrowing from the trust for personal use. You're having a hard time at home with expenses. You see the trust with all the money, or the estate, you start spending, buy a car, things like that. A big mistake, okay? Big mistake. You can't do it because remember, the beneficiaries are going to find out about it. They're not going to be happy, and they're going to bring in us to do an investigation. Behave in a self-serving manner, charging unusually large sums of money. Can't do it. Remember, there's a statute. What you can receive in estate and trust, it has to be reasonable. You fail to keep accurate records. Big problem. This is, again, it's record keeping. Simple, right? Anything you do, you need to have a documentation. Working with one or more beneficiaries, you need to keep communication open with all the beneficiaries. Okay, don't have favorites. Don't do things for people because it's going to come back in the end. Failing to report to beneficiaries and keep them informed, right? Again, it's really the interpersonal relationships are key. Permitting co-executives to breach their fiduciary duty or commit fraud. Bringing in your friends, your lawyers who, overcharge or don't do things for the estate or the trust. Commingling funds. Don't commingle funds. Keep an iron wall between you and that estate or trust. Don't commingle anything, ever. Now, we've seen many issues, including unauthorized loans to themselves, paid expenses without proper invoicing, and also all kinds of sloppiness at the onset of the initial, when you take over the estate or the trust. We had what I call the 100-year forensic accounting. We had a trust that owned a piece of land in Manhattan over 100 years period, so there was different trustees, and it came time to sell the property because it was worth so much, and some of the beneficiaries thought there was something's fraud going on through the 100 years, and we actually went back and they had great records, and we went back and checked everything out. There were some minor mistakes and things like that, but generally we said, listen guys, there was no deliberate fraud here. No one stole large amounts of money. It just didn't happen. And the reason we were able to say that is because they had the records, and the beneficiaries were shocked, but it was not, they couldn't dispute it. The case of the hidden bearer bonds. We had a auto mechanic who worked for an auto body shop, and the owner really liked him a lot. He had no children. He had nieces and uncles and stuff like that, or nieces and aunts and all that kind of cousins. He was very successful. He had these huge warehouses he filled with antique cars, like Model T cars and sports cars. And he had another one. He was an accordion player, full of accordions. And he left everything to the auto mechanic. And obviously, all the beneficiaries tried to sue him. The relatives tried to sue him. And he brought us in to help him monitor and just make sure everything was done right. And we got an appraiser in, sold the antique cars for fair market value. Sold the some of those accordions were worth $30,000, which is crazy. We sold everything because we didn't want them. Great records. And he eventually did win. The owner wanted him to have everything, and we were able to show that. And we had great record keeping because we did all the records for him. But he used to call me. He called me at weird hours and say, "Hey, Robert, I was at dinner and there was a big bump in the rug, and I picked the rug up, and there's all these things called bearer bonds." I'm like, "What? Bearer bonds you just take and you can sell. They're not traceable." And he had hundreds of thousands of them. And I said, "Listen, just keep it there. I'm going to come get it. We'll put it in the trust. It's going back in the estate." He would find boxes of gold coins in the attic, more bearer bonds in the shed, all kinds. Everywhere he looked, I said, "Don't throw anything out. Look through everything." And a lot of the cash that was stored in the house, the guy was an older guy, so it was silver certificates. Like these were $5 and $10 bills from the 30s and 40s. So everything in there was like an antique, But anyway, we accounted for everything. It was a lot of fun, but it worked out well for him, and for us, it was an interesting experience. But estate personal loans. We had a couple come to us. They were in tears because they were handling an estate, and they were borrowing money from the estate, and the kids found out about it. Even though the estate, it said that in the will they could borrow money. And it broke the whole family up because the way they did it, it looked like they were stealing the money. And if the kids didn't challenge them, they wouldn't have told them. But we went in. We said, "Hey, guys, you can't do this. Why are you taking the money out without documentation? This is a loan. This is the interest." So even though we accounted for everything and put everything back to where it was, it destroyed the family because these guys didn't know what they were doing. They didn't understand. You can't, even if the loan, if it says you can borrow money, you better have a document that says I'm borrowing the money. right? Otherwise, it looks like you're stealing the money. So anyway, that was just, I think, poor record keeping, but it was, they couldn't fix the relationship with the kids, and it was really devastating for them. The other thing is just some general stuff here. You know, you got to remember that when you probate a will, that's a public record. Anybody can go down to the courthouse and see that document. That's why people like to use trust and pour over trust. And here's some things here about just some basic, you know, planning tools that people use and understand. And probating a will is not a big deal. You go down to the courthouse with a copy of the will, raise a seal, death certificate, and ID, and that's called probating. But anyway, people make it much more difficult than it is, and you get administration papers, and you know, it's good to get some help if you don't understand, or you know, look at videos like this. But anyway, listen, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Smash that like button. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments section below. Me or one of my associates will get back to you.